What does AUMA say about possession, transporting, purchasing, or giving away any medical marijuana?
A little earlier, you heard Russ Belville say he wanted to hear some facts, not some opinion. Well, let me give you some facts about AUMA. A 6-plant limit. And CCHI started this conversation back with Jack Herrera. We were looking at 99. No plant limit at all. But the powers that be wanted to sell this. They wanted to sell it to soccer moms. Well, I got news for you. The soccer moms are all baked. Soccer moms want more than 6 plants. Let me give you another fact. 1 ounce. 1 ounce. I want you to think about that just for a second, what that means, that you're allowed to have. And Sean eloquently said earlier, talked about freedom. What kind of freedom is that? This bill was written in a cubicle in Sacramento by a group of 2 to 3 people. The person's name that wrote it was named Gail Kaufman. Take a guess where Gail Kaufman gets her funding. This is not a grassroots initiative. This is AstroTurf. Grassroots is CCHI. Grassroots is Patrick Moore. Grassroots is Lynette Davies, Marsha Blount. Unfortunately, grassroots is also some of the people like Lanny Swerdlow and Chris Conrad, friends of mine both, who have come out for AUMA. And not once have you ever heard me say, even in my most manic times on Facebook, have you ever heard me say anything negative about Russ Belville, Chris Conrad? Because at the end of the day, on November 9th, I want to be able to smoke a joint with Russ Belville and Chris Conrad, talk to them, learn from them, advocate with them, but not like this. Jail time for juveniles, that's another fact. Kids are under 21, they're impressionable, you have this opportunity, they're like young flowers. You can educate them, you can talk to them about the dangers of alcohol and Oxycontin, and what are you going to do? You're going to have that precious moment, you're going to waste it by giving them a fine, an infraction, or like they say, oh, it's only 6 months in jail. Think about that, only 6 months in jail. Well, I spent 39 days in the Monterey County Jail, and I'm not the same person anymore. My finances are destroyed, kicked out of law school, embarrassed, shunned. You can't drive. Passenger in your car with medicine. There's nothing about asset forfeiture. This is California. Imagine, just imagine if we push back on this and we win. Imagine what people will say. In 2016, the activists did it. They did it against Sean Parker, who invented Facebook, and we did it on Facebook. We pushed back, and what power that will give to the other states who, when Ohio and Oregon and Washington, when medical is being crushed, grassroots did it. Police didn't do it. Law enforcement didn't do it. Republican Party didn't do it. Grassroots did it.
I understand only too well what it's like to not spend a couple of days in lockup, but to spend years in federal prison for marijuana. There are some realities about the law that I don't like, and I know people up here don't like. But when you walk into a courtroom and you've been accused of a cannabis crime, and you try to say, well, Sean Parker wrote this and it's not fair, and like I did, I tried to bring LV into my trial. I tried to bring up that the federal government gives her marijuana. You know what? Didn't even get to come in the courtroom. I was looking at this from the perspective of somebody who went to prison for cannabis activism. My wife had cancer. Okay, I didn't jump in this because I like smoking pot. She was dying from cancer. Okay, so I had to go out and find it and grow it. The cops showed up. We had to deal with them. I used to represent police officers. I've worked for firms that represent their unions and that were outside counsel for them when they beat the crap out of somebody. We had to go and try to defend them, okay? I know that side of this. I also know what it's like to eat bologna and sleep on a damn yoga mat for 5 years, okay? I promised the guys when I left I was going to address reform of the criminal justice system. I was going to push back on the war on drugs and this capitalistic treatment system. I was going to do everything I could. So as I read through 64, those things popped out at me. I didn't like everything I read. I don't. But back to your question. possession right now. Under an ounce, Schwarzenegger did this in the sunshine of Prop 19 to get people not to vote for it. Under an ounce is a $100 fine. Okay, under an ounce, under 64, if you're over 21 or over, is nothing. It's not a crime. Under that, if you're between 18 and 21, it's a $100 fine. If you're below that, you don't get fined. You don't go to juvenile custody because kids all go to counseling and treatment and community service for every cannabis crime they're accused of. Now, that's the facts. Cultivation, right now, cultivating one plant is a felony. That's the de jure part of it. The de facto is there aren't enough cops out there to police all this. So people are being allowed to grow all kinds of marijuana. But when you get drug into court and say, well, everybody else is doing it, that's like what you get to say to the highway patrol officer when you're doing 80 and he stops you on the freeway. Well, the guys are going past me. Well, yeah, you're still doing 80. You broke the law, okay? That's the reality. And that's what this is trying to back away from. Now, sharing right now, if you share, okay, and you can call it whatever you want, furnishing to people, these are crimes, these are felonies, okay? Now, if you have an ounce or less, or if you grow at your property and keep all you've got, you can have all your buddies over, you can share what you want. It's not a crime.
Thank you,
You
Dale.
can take an ounce with you.
Thank
and
you,
can
Dale.
share. It's not a crime.
This is like predicting the stock market or where the housing market's going to go. There's a lot of inner working parts. We don't know a lot, to be very honest with you. That was the most honest thing a DPA lawyer who's involved in processing this thing said. We don't know because it doesn't say. It's going to be interpreted. Two issues with this I want to touch upon. One, the real issue here is it is going to create a legal market. And that legal market is going to be for people who have money or access to funds, who want to sell it, grow it, or package it and test it. And that's great. I'm a big fan of that. Raise taxes. I think it's important. But like my veterans who are not going to be going in and being able to afford an eighth, that in San Diego right now, some of the strains they use are $70, $65, and that's before 30% or 35 or 40% taxes are going to be paying. So whatever it ends up being paying, they're now going to be forced to make a decision. I cannot afford this legal market. So the decision I have to make is I go back on pharma or I work in the black market. So if I work in the black market, that's where all these police officers are going to focus. So what we don't, Newsom said in his Modesto B, we have the good actors who are going to come on board and work, and those guys over there are bad actors. Let me tell you, the police are coming for you if you're in the black market. And the people in the black market are going to be the diverters, the people shipping out of state. So it's delusional to think the black market's going away, regardless. Okay, it's a full of shit to try to say, oh, it's going to help the environment. Bullshit. Okay, let's get real here. And what's going to happen is we're moving the war on marijuana and prohibition to where we run every war in this country, a war on the poor, a war on the needy. Those are the people who are going to get thrown in jail now, and they don't have the bail money. My veterans are going to get stopped. You talk about limitations. 8 grams concentrate? My brother Mark over there, 4 grams? I got veterans who go through that in days. They have to carry that much in terms of strains, morning, afternoon, or night. You are going to be jailing people who fought for this country, and that is disgusting. I cannot accept that. The other thing I want to talk about, Russ, I want to welcome you from Oregon, okay? I appreciate it. We got to talk. You got to let me talk, ma'am. I appreciate it. So what I'm talking to you today is, it's not even what it says, what it doesn't say. It doesn't say a lot. And the reality is, these people who are for AUMA, they're living in fantasy land at Disneyland, how this thing is going to be implemented. These vets out here can tell you when big government runs something. Look at the VA. Hey, who here loves the VA? Raise your hand if you're a veteran. See, they don't want it, okay? So the reality is, I don't want the state of California telling me what I can and can't do to medicate to but we have 22 deaths a day by suicide. We have an epidemic opiate overdose rate. Cannabis is showing that it declined. It is the only thing out there now that's combating suicides and overdoses. And we're going to restrict cannabis through regulation and cost? That is disgusting. We have to say no. This bill, if passed, will kill veterans.
Vets can have medical usage more. This law, you're making it sound like AUMA is saying a vet can only have 4 grams. Those limits in here were about no one with a medical card, anybody on the street. Our vets have the right to get more, and through their medical system can get more. So we are not, this is not going after vets. And the other characterization that yes, I agree with you guys. Our government's history is not great. Every institution is corrupt, and we've opened it now up for 5 more corrupt institutions to pick our pockets. I get that. But the question is, are we disempowering the cops through Prop 64? And yes, we are. We are disempowering the ripping of plants. We are disempowering counties from saying that I can't have 6 plants growing in my house. It is a step towards empowerment, and you guys, shame on you for making the unknown a boogeyman.
Empowerment for rich white people.
No, that's baloney. That's baloney. The large licenses won't even happen for 5 years. There are all kinds of protections in here for micro businesses and for the small growers. So to pretend that this bill is for the big guys, that's crazy.
Yeah. Okay, so personal possession, transporting limits, these are really big to me because personally, I smoke 2 ounces of weed a day. If I didn't have concentrates, I would have to literally carry a backpack around of weed just to get anywhere, right? So, you know, when you're looking at, well, an ounce is a lot of marijuana to some people. To other people, an ounce isn't even half their one-day supply, right? So really, these arbitrary limits that we've set as far as possession are crazy. And then when they factor into transportation, you have the real problem. Because now if you grew your own in your own backyard and you were lucky enough to be in one of the counties that allows you to grow outside and doesn't require you to have a special permit to grow on your own property, which is another part of this, well, your one outdoor plant could yield anywhere from 1 to 10 pounds. So if you then take, you know, maybe a half pound or so, you want to go share it with your buddies and you hop in your car, you are now in risk of breaking the law. Even though, you know, it's your weed, you grew it at your own house, you're not going to sell it to anybody, you're going to share it with your friends, but guess what? You have more than an ounce on you. Or you have more than 8 grams of concentrate. And it's actually a little, there's a weird thing in there where they screwed up. I mean, it just shows how poorly this thing was written. One part of it says 4 grams, the other part says 7 grams, and they're saying less than 8 grams. This was rushed and done by people who didn't really understand what they were doing. And to people who do understand what they're doing, it is clearly the wrong direction. The only way you can be transporting your marijuana now is if you have a permit. So anybody driving around pounds, which, yeah, that is the black market, but I know plenty of people who do that, they're going to jail. Anyone who carries around more than 7 grams of concentrate on them, they're going to jail. You know, you have the system where, you know, we're talking about disempowering the police, but what we've actually done, or what this would actually do, was completely empower the police. There is no gray area now. If you have more than an ounce or you have more than 8 grams, you are breaking the law, period, right? And the only way we can change those parts is going back to the voters. So really, we're in a really bad situation when you look at some of the fine details, and those fine details include how you're going to transport your weed, if you have to pay to grow in your own house, because, yeah, you can't ban indoor growing, but there's nothing that says you couldn't create a $1,000 permit for it. And then when you talk about, you know, the corporate overlords, with the section in here that says you have to have local and state permits, you have to have a special permit devised by your county, by your city and or county, the only people that are going to be able to do that are people with really deep pockets. Yeah. We're talking hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars.
All right, so the basics are that adults 21 and over will be able to possess an ounce of cannabis flowers in public, 8 grams of concentrate in public. At home, they'll be able to cultivate 6 plants indoors that no locality can ban, and be able to possess the entire amount of their harvest, no matter how much that is. The other thing that we have to keep in mind is that Prop 215 exists and will continue to exist and has robust protections and even some improvements that are built into Prop 64. So if you do need to smoke 2 ounces a day and you've got your card, nothing changes for you. You're still going to be doing exactly what you've been doing. In some cases, Prop 64 even makes these things better. Currently, trying to transport any amount of marijuana is a $100 misdemeanor. After Prop 64, it is legal. Currently, right now, the sharing of marijuana If you are over the age of 21, the law is section 11360B that says every person who gives away less than an ounce is guilty of a misdemeanor punished by a fine of $100. After Prop 64, it shall be lawful for people 21 and over to give to people 21 and over less than an ounce. If you're between 18 and 20 years old, currently passing a joint is one of those $100 no arrest misdemeanors. After Prop 64, if you're 18 to 20 years old, it is reduced to a $100 infraction. So things are getting better. And it's ludicrous to think that by reducing penalties and making things legal, there could actually be more arrests. And there's three reasons for this. Number one, we have the evidence. In Colorado, the number of marijuana charges for all crimes dropped 80% after legalization. And that's not just the less than an ounce that they weren't busted and the less than 6 plants that weren't busting. That's all marijuana crimes. 20 pounds in the trunk, 80 plants in the garden, all crimes. 4 out of 5 people who used to get busted aren't getting busted anymore. In Washington state, the rate decline is 63%. Almost 2 out of 3 people who used to get busted aren't getting busted. Now, the reasons for this. Number one, cops no longer have that special little key that unlocks your Fifth Amendment rights, the lie that I smell pot. They can just say, I smell pot, and boom, that triggers all sorts of search, seizure, or all sorts of problems. After marijuana is legalized, even a gram, they don't have that excuse anymore. And finally, the number one thing that helps to protect people when even a gram is legalized, much less an ounce, drug dogs are retired. Colorado, Oregon, Washington, and Alaska have had to retire all their pot-sniffing dogs because a dog can't smell the difference between a legal ounce and an illegal pound.